Though she says she hates humans, my foxgirl roommate stays by my door. The reluctant roommate. The apartment building in Mistfall Harbor stood crooked against the grey autumn sky, its weathered walls covered in ivy that seemed to whisper secrets. Cato Ashford climbed the narrow stairs with his single suitcase, grateful to finally have affordable housing near the university, even if it meant sharing the small space. His new roommate waited in the doorway, arms crossed. She was breathtaking in an otherworldly way, silver hair cascading past her shoulders, amber eyes that gleamed with fox-like intelligence, and 2 soft ears that twitched atop her head. 3 silver tails swayed behind her with obvious irritation. "You're the human." Her voice dripped with disdain. "Cato. Nice to meet you." He extended his hand. She stared at it like he'd offered her garbage. "I'm Himari. Don't touch my things, don't speak to me unless necessary, and definitely don't expect us to be friends. I despise humans." "Understood," Cato said quietly, lowering his hand. He'd heard that some yokai harbored deep resentment toward humans, though he'd never understood why. "I'll stay out of your way." She sniffed and disappeared into her room, door closing with deliberate firmness. The apartment was tiny, 2 small bedrooms, a cramped kitchen, and a bathroom they'd have to share. Cato unpacked his few belongings, arranged his books, and tried not to feel the weight of loneliness settling over him. That night, he lay in bed reading when he heard soft footsteps in the hallway. They paused outside his door. He waited, curious, but no knock came. The footsteps eventually retreated. This pattern continued nightly. Himari would pass his door, pause, then leave. Sometimes he heard her breathing on the other side of the thin wood. It puzzled him, this contradiction between her harsh words and her lingering presence. On his 4th night, Cato woke with fever burning through him, throat raw and head pounding. He stumbled to the bathroom for water, then collapsed back into bed, too weak to care about food or medicine. Morning light filtered through his curtains when he finally stirred. Something sat outside his door, a clay cup of herbal tea, still warm, and 2 white pills on a folded napkin. No note, no explanation. Cato smiled despite his fever and drank the tea, tasting honey and ginger and something that felt like reluctant kindness, small bridges. Cato recovered within 2 days, the mysterious medicine working faster than anything he'd bought at a pharmacy. He knew Himari was responsible, though she never acknowledged it. When he thanked her, she simply scoffed and walked away, tail swishing with feigned indifference. He decided to return the kindness in his own way. That evening, he folded origami cranes from colored paper, delicate birds in shades of silver and gold. He left one outside her door with a note written in careful script, "Thank you for the tea. You're kinder than you pretend." The crane disappeared by morning. Days passed. Cato left more small gifts, a bookmark with pressed flowers, an individually wrapped chocolate, a sketch of the harbor at sunset. Himari never mentioned them, but he noticed her posture softening slightly when they crossed paths in the narrow kitchen. One afternoon, thunder cracked across the sky like the world splitting open. Rain hammered against the windows with violent intensity. Cato heard a small, frightened sound from Himari's room, so unlike her usual composure. He approached her door cautiously. "Himari, are you all right?" Silence. Then, barely audible, "I'm fine. Go away." But her voice trembled, betraying fear. Cato settled against the wall beside her door, pulling out his worn copy of poetry. He began reading aloud, verses about calm seas and gentle winds, stories of safety and warmth. His voice carried through the door, steady and soothing. Inside, Himari pressed her back against the same wall, separated by mere inches of wood. Her ears flattened with each thunderclap, but something about his presence, his voice, made the storm feel less terrifying. She closed her eyes and listened, one hand pressed against the door as if she could feel him through it. Hours passed. The storm gradually weakened. When silence finally returned, Cato heard her whisper through the door, "Thank you." He smiled. "Anytime." That night, he found a plate outside his door, perfectly seasoned rice with grilled fish, miso soup still steaming, and pickled vegetables arranged with artistic precision. A small note read, "I made too much. Don't waste it." Cato ate every bite, savoring not just the incredible flavors but the warmth of connection slowly building between them. The next morning, he left an origami fox outside her door. When he returned from classes, he glimpsed through her cracked doorway a small decorative box on her desk, filled with every crane and note he'd given her, arranged like treasures. His heart swelled with hope. Walls crumbling. The prejudice arrived on a Tuesday, sharp and unexpected as a knife. Kato was walking across campus with Himari. They'd started coincidentally leaving for classes at the same time, when 3 students blocked their path. The tallest one sneered at Himari. "Shouldn't you be in the yokai district? Humans don't want your kind contaminating our university." Himari's ears flattened, tails bristling. Before she could respond with the cutting remarks Kato knew she possessed, he stepped forward. "She belongs here as much as anyone. Move." Defending a fox demon? Maybe you're contaminated too. The punch came before Kato could think. His fist connected with the student's jaw, sending him stumbling backward. The fight was brief and ugly. Kato took several hits before campus security arrived, but he didn't regret a single bruised knuckle. Later, in their apartment, Himari's hands trembled with suppressed emotion as she cleaned his split lip with unexpected gentleness. Her amber eyes glistened. "You fool," she whispered. "Why would you fight for me? I've been nothing but cruel to you." "Because it was wrong." Kato winced as she applied antiseptic to his knuckles. "And because you're not cruel. You're scared." Her breath caught. For a moment, her careful mask crumbled completely. "Humans killed my family when I was young. They burned our shrine, called us monsters. I swore I'd never trust one again." Kato gently caught her wrist, stopping her ministrations. "I'm sorry that happened to you. But I'm not them, Himari." She looked at their joined hands, at the tenderness in his eyes despite his injuries. Something fundamental shifted in her chest, like ice breaking after a long winter. "No," she agreed softly. "You're not." That evening, they shared dinner at the small table, truly together for the first time. Himari told him stories of the spirit world, of fox weddings under moonlight, of ancient forests where magic still thrived, of her lonely years pretending she didn't crave connection. Kato listened with rapt attention, asking questions that showed genuine interest rather than morbid curiosity. His respect for her world, her experiences, made her heart ache with unfamiliar warmth. They decided to watch a movie afterward, sitting on the worn couch with careful space between them. But as the film played, exhaustion pulled at Himari. Her head grew heavy, tilting sideways until it rested against Kato's shoulder. He froze, barely breathing, as her soft ears brushed his neck. Her tails curled around them both unconsciously, seeking warmth and comfort. She murmured something in sleep, a word that sounded like his name. Kato allowed himself to smile, to gently rest his cheek against her hair, to acknowledge the truth he'd been avoiding. He was falling for her completely, confession under moonlight. The Autumn Moon Festival arrived with lanterns floating like fireflies across Mistfall Harbor. The entire town transformed into something magical. Paper lights strung between buildings, food stalls releasing sweet aromas, and music drifting through streets filled with humans and yokai celebrating together. Kato was adjusting his navy yukata when he heard Himari's door open. He turned and forgot how to breathe. She stood in the hallway wearing a traditional kimono of silver silk embroidered with cherry blossoms. Her hair was swept up elegantly, adorned with delicate hairpins that caught the light. Her amber eyes met his with uncharacteristic shyness. "You look beautiful," Kato managed, his voice rough with emotion. Pink tinged her cheeks. "You don't look terrible yourself, human." But her tone held warmth now, affection replacing the earlier contempt. She tucked a strand of hair behind one pointed ear nervously. They walked to the festival together, their shoulders occasionally brushing. Himari seemed different tonight, lighter somehow, as if she'd finally set down a burden she'd carried too long. She laughed at the festival games, her tail swaying with genuine happiness as Kato won her a small fox charm from a shooting gallery. "Your aim is surprisingly good for someone who studies literature," she teased. "I contain multitudes," he replied with a grin. As evening deepened, they wandered toward the harbor where the crowds thinned. Moonlight painted silver paths across the dark water. Lanterns bobbed in the distance like dreams floating just out of reach. Himari stopped at the water's edge, her expression turning serious. "Kato, I need to tell you something." His heart hammered against his ribs. "I'm listening." "I've been lying." She turned to face him fully, vulnerability naked in her eyes. "From the beginning. I never hated you. I was drawn to your kindness the moment we met, and it terrified me. Every night I stood outside your door because being near you made me feel safe for the first time in years. I've been falling for you since the day you offered me your hand, even though I refused to take it." Kato stepped closer, closing the distance between them. "Why tell me now?" "Because I'm tired of being afraid. Because you fought for me. Because when I'm with you, I remember what it feels like to have a home." Her voice cracked with emotion. "Because I love you, Kato Ashford, and I can't pretend anymore." He cupped her face gently between his palms, thumbs brushing away the tears that escaped down her cheeks. "I love you too. I think I have since you left that tea outside my door." She laughed through her tears. "That was terrible tea. I was so nervous making it." "It was perfect," he whispered. Then his lips found hers, soft and tentative at first, then deeper as years of her loneliness and his quiet hope melted into something beautiful. Her tails wrapped around him instinctively, pulling him closer as if she could absorb him into her very being. His hands slid into her hair, careful of the ornaments, cradling her like something precious. They kissed beneath the autumn moon while lanterns drifted past, two souls finally brave enough to admit what their hearts had known all along. When they finally parted, breathless, Himari rested her forehead against his. "Take me home." "Always," Kato promised, and they walked back hand in hand, no longer separate but together. Love's true home. Himari stopped pretending the morning after the festival. Kato woke to find her curled at the foot of his bed in fox form, a beautiful silver creature with 3 tails, watching him with amber eyes that held nothing but affection. "Good morning," he said softly, reaching out to scratch behind her ears. She made a pleased sound, leaning into his touch, before transforming back into her human form. She wore one of his oversized shirts, her hair messy from sleep, looking more beautiful than he'd ever seen her. "I used to sleep outside your door," she admitted. "But this is much more comfortable." He pulled her into his arms, and she settled against his chest with a contented sigh, her tails wrapping around them both like a warm blanket. Their routines transformed into something sacred. Mornings began with tea shared in comfortable silence, Himari's head resting on his shoulder as they watched the sunrise paint the harbor gold. She taught him to cook traditional yokai dishes while he introduced her to his favorite human recipes, their laughter filling the small kitchen as flour dusted their hair and noses. Evenings were spent reading together on the couch, Himari in her fox form sprawled across his lap while he absently stroked her fur and turned pages. Sometimes she'd transform and steal his book, insisting he read aloud to her instead, her eyes never leaving his face as his voice washed over her. One night, as rain drummed softly against the windows, no longer frightening with him beside her, Himari traced patterns on his chest, her expression thoughtful. "Do you remember when you asked why I stayed by your door those first nights?" Kato hummed, fingers threading through her silver hair. "I told myself I was keeping watch, making sure the human didn't cause trouble. But the truth is..." She paused, vulnerable even now. "You already felt like home. Your breathing, your presence, it calmed something wild in me. I'd spent so long alone, convincing myself I didn't need anyone. Then you arrived with your gentle smile and careful kindness, and suddenly my heart knew where it belonged." Kato tilted her chin up, kissing her with infinite tenderness. "You are my home too. Every moment with you feels like finding something I didn't know I'd lost." She smiled against his lips. "No more sleeping outside doors. No more walls between us," he promised. Himari's tails wrapped around him possessively, and she kissed him deeper, pouring years of loneliness and newfound joy into the embrace. They held each other as rain sang its lullaby, two hearts finally at rest. The apartment in Mistfall Harbor remained small and crooked, but it no longer felt lonely. It had become what Himari always needed, a sanctuary built not of walls and doors, but of shared mornings, gentle touches, and love brave enough to admit its own existence. Some nights, Kato still found Himari standing by his door. But now she was leaving, not arriving, checking on him one last time before sleep claimed them both. And always, she returned to curl against him, her tails tangled with his legs, her breath warm against his neck, finally home. Lessons. Love requires courage to be vulnerable, to lower the walls we build around our wounded hearts and trust someone with the tender truth of who we really are. True connection grows not from grand gestures but from small, consistent acts of kindness, a cup of tea, a folded crane, a hand extended in friendship even when refused. Home is not a place but a person who makes you feel safe enough to stop pretending, to shed your armor, and to simply be yourself without fear or shame. Sometimes the love we claim to hate most fiercely is the love we're most afraid to want, because wanting means risking the pain of loss all over again, but the risk is always worth the joy of finding someone who stays.